Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We are going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Andreas, one of the best reaction channels on YouTube. Thanks so much. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts on Sadness. I Can't Say Goodbye. I feel like we're in the mood for something very sad. There's too much. The band, the title of the song. We're in for something a bit gloomy here. Let's dive into it. We got 16 minutes ahead of us. Let's see what's going on with Sadness's I Can't Say Goodbye. Very ethereal yet muffled. We got a destruction of the audio, I think, creating a detuning. A lot of muffled music this week. Aphex Twin, Crystal Castles also, I think. Now Sadness. It's only 3, but still makes up for at least 30% of the week. See about tomorrow. We have some clipping going on there as well. Musical acceptance. being drowned out by white noise. It's like Midwest emo done through a black metal production. Or, maybe shoegaze done through black metal. While rain is pouring down on the roof. You're trying to listen to your music with like this heavy rain outside. Heavy reverb on the vocals, some other effects also obscuring it. Very intriguing. Such a bizarre production on this, especially in this moment, because I don't know what's making it sound like a washing machine. Is that 16th note bass kicks that's causing it to get washed out so hard? Okay, a little bit of a key change there. Just little detuning warbles that remind me of like VHS tapes. I was kind of expecting that to take us out. I hate to think this. I think it's one of the worst opinions to have about something music related, but it feels like we're padding time. So much of this song, I have things to speak about. I think it does what it does very well and leads the listener through a very specific journey up until the last, I don't know, 3 minutes or so. I don't see the purpose of most of what we just listened to. Yeah, I mean, dang. The uh the first fade out would have been a fantastic place to stop that. To go back into another heavy section that retread familiar ground to take us back to the very same fade out we just had. And we just had a song that did this last week, I think it was. I called it out for the same thing. We had a tacked on extended outro that didn't add anything to the song, just padded out time. At least that one I think had some new lyrics in it, even if I think uh, it wasn't a great way to lead into it. It had something new to bring to the table, but this was just a complete retread of what we just did, but condensed down into like 90 seconds. Well, let me take this back a second. What if the purpose is that they can't say goodbye, so they don't let the song end? Even at the very final moments, they're like, can I just have 90 more seconds? We'll just redo things as they were. I need more time before this is over. That's the best read I have on it. Musically, it feels padded, but thematically, it might work. One of those things I'll appreciate from a distance, if that is what they were going for, which I kind of hope so. It lends itself well to the title and the melancholy of the track, which is the first topic I want to hit on. The song is interestingly dreary and optimistic simultaneously. There is an overall mood of melancholy, but there are moments of optimism, of brightness that shine through it from time to time. It happens enough that I would call it a core element of the track, but it is not the baseline feeling. The atmosphere in every section communicates sorrow and grief, and 70% of the time has something optimistic to pair with it. But the default mode is sorrow. And it's an interesting combination that I think works. It feels at ends with itself frequently, but I think is how grief tends to work. There is always the melancholy. You can't get over that. Even as you move into the final stages of grief, there's always a return to the sadness eventually. It's something that will not disappear. But it's usually peppered with moments of joy or a type of happiness. Joy is probably the wrong word for it. It's the bittersweetness that comes with memories, remembering the good times you had and knowing that you won't have them again. I think they do a great job of conveying that. And there is an extra level of atmosphere that's conveyed here as well through the white noise. I don't know what in particular it's supposed to represent, but to me it's just an extra layer. It is something to obfuscate. It could represent quite a many things. One visual I got from it is heavy rain hitting the rooftop while you're trying to listen to music. But it could just as easily be a metaphysical barrier as well. This song is I Can't Say Goodbye, and that could relate to quite a few things. It could be your attachment to this plane of existence on your way out. It could be the feelings of not wanting to finalize or hit that level of acceptance that somebody you know is leaving. They might be going to another part of the world, right? And that physical friendship or relationship is no longer there. You might be able to FaceTime, but it's not the same. And long distance relationships tend to grow further apart as physical relationships begin to develop in the new area. As both people move on from this friendship to the next. Um, so it could be that division between the listener and the emotion, the physical space or the metaphysical space between these two people being represented through the music, through the sound, through the production. Um, you know, I think that's the only two hypotheses I have, but I mean, it literally could be anything that divides or hides. I'm curious if sadness always uses that sound. Maybe I'm looking a bit too far into it in this track, and it's just their signature production. I didn't even think anything of it in pertaining to this specific track. It's just how they make their music. But to me, it adds to the weight of the track. It doesn't only add, though, at least in my listen, it's also a detracting force to the song. Coming at it from a purely first listen, the white noise aesthetic is not fun. And maybe that's, again, by design, but it tends to hide a lot of the interesting information. As I mentioned at the end, I couldn't even tell what had made the compression. Is that what it is? The white noise is static. What was making it so big? I hypothesized it might have been the double bass kicks, uh, throwing down 16th notes repeatedly, which would cause these big spikes of the compression. But I honestly don't know because I couldn't hear past it. I was lucky to hear the chords at times, and I thought it was funny that I'm pretty sure this is what black metal sounded like to me when y'all first introduced it. And, even up until the last couple of years, I would always say that I found it difficult to hear the music behind the noise, behind the static. This is that exponentially more. I've my ear has gotten more attuned to the typical black metal production, and I can hear more of the musicality behind the compression now, but this just takes it to another level. If you ever heard me say that, you're like, what do you mean, Bryan? How can you not hear the notes? This might give you an idea of what I was hearing back then. The static is just overwhelming, and positively so for the listening experience, but negatively so for the critical listening experience, where I'm trying to understand what's happening musically. I definitely get the surface level read. That white noise is everywhere. You can't miss it. But I'm trying to dig deeper, and it's just covering all of it up. It's difficult to get past it. Um, but I imagine that getting past it is not the point. You're supposed to feel it. It's supposed to be present for whatever it means to you as a listener. And see, that's one of the interesting things that I think I've got to come to terms with better is that what I'm looking for to break down in the music is not always what the composer is necessarily thinking is a core aspect of their music. I'm trying to hear what the guitars are playing, what the vocals are singing. Whoever made this sadness, they don't seem to care about that. That's not an important part of the track. If it was, it might be more present. It is submerged underneath this wall of sounds. The feeling of that submersion, that weight, is the heart of the track, not the music. And so I'm looking for something that the composer doesn't really seem to care that much about. It's a necessary part of the song, but it's not the primary part of the song. And I have to get better at approaching music from at least a perceived perspective of the original intent. I tend to approach a lot of music how I would listen to it, and when it doesn't match that, I usually have some negative things to say alongside the more neutral or positive comments I have. And honestly, uh, like 8 minutes into this track, probably about the halfway point, I still figured, I was starting to build a table of contents, so to speak, for this analysis section that was primarily negative focused. I had thought about Orbital that we just listened to, and I was like, dang, I really ragged on that track, and it wasn't a great experience for me, but I probably shouldn't have been so hard on it. What's this one trying to say? What should I take away from it? And that's when I reversed my perspective here and tried to get more of a positive take. I'm not going to say I enjoyed this track, and there's a lot of it that I found distracting. Um, but changing my perspective, I found more positive things to talk about. And I think it's important to do that more often, to recognize where my process is failing, and to amend it. So, with that said, this is Mrs. Emo, which is bonkers. What I could hear of the music was very much rooted in Midwest emo and pop emo, even a little bit. The guitar work danced between emo tropes and a little bit into post hardcore. The drums went a little bit into post hardcore as well. The vocals are clearly emo in their melodic flow, but it's all super muffled, as if I'm listening to a band play, but I'm outside the venue. And then that muffled outside the venue sound is recorded and passed into some of the worst speakers I have ever heard. And there is no mastering or engineering done on this, and whatever you get out of it is what you get out of it. And that is a bonker sound profile to base a track off of. It makes it difficult to listen to. There is clipping and distortion and destruction all over the place. There's also the VHS effect that goes on in some of the quieter sections where the white noise isn't as prevalent. It's not activated as much as the sounds are quieter. And so we destroy the music through pitch shifting, having a bit of a warble there, giving it that old school VHS vibe. And like I mentioned, the first half of this reaction, I was like, this just isn't good. It's a pretty iterative song in its two, three vocal sections. Outside of that, they really go for this proggy atmospheric kind of writing. If we were to remove the production entirely, I would probably call this something like proggy emo. Or maybe atmospheric emo. There's very few emo epics I can think of, even less that are over 10 minutes long, and even less that are so focused on atmosphere. To me, emo is a genre that tends to be a bit more lyrically focused, but as we've explored in the past, I'm leaning more towards the latter end of emo's life more than the earlier era of emo, and it's possible that it was more instrumental based than when I began to get experience with the genre. Um, but yeah, so it does think outside the emo box a little bit, but the core thing here is what they've done. after that iterative emo writing plus some atmosphere and then the production. And so it really isn't fair to talk about it just on the musical side. It's the melodies are very nice. The guitar work, the drums, I couldn't hear any bass. It's all really nice. If this was a pure emo band and maybe we just took the vocal segments and smashed them together and made like a 4.5 minute track out of it, I think I would absolutely love this. But that's not what the song is. And so to me, it ends up being a song that focuses intently on weight and possibly even memories more so than anything else. The vocals are hyper reverbed. The song itself is muffled, hidden behind distortion. You can barely even make out what's happening at times. Um, it feels, as I mentioned earlier, with the outside the venue metaphor, it feels distant. And it's possible that it feels distant not through physical distance, but temporal distance, in that we may be quite some time divorced from the actual moment of separation, that the song itself is a memory of the time that you had to say goodbye to somebody. And despite all of the time that has existed between then and now, I still can't say goodbye. And so it's this weight of grief that has never been resolved. And the overall pain of that, how it distorts and destroys and contorts life. Everything sort of has the color drained from it. Everything feels just a tad bit further away than it is. Nothing is in arm's reach. That happiness seems so far away on the on the horizon. There is a happiness in here. Musically, we talked about. Um, but every single time it started to shine through, the core gloom began to take over. And I think there is an aspect of this song that the vocalist or narrator or character or whatever wants to move on. It's just real difficult for them. And the music, all of the things I'm not a real big fan of in isolation, tell that story. This is not something that could be done without all of the production techniques on it. And it does end up feeling more somber and more Herculean of a task than if it was a straight emo track. I'm gonna hit some lyrics. We'll see what's going on there. And the song is very straightforward. There's a lot less lyrics than I thought. The chorus is a 4-line stanza repeated once. It says, I can't say goodbye even though I'm never with you. I can't stop crying. I want you to see it. So this is somebody still in grief about being separated from somebody. And not having dealt with that grief. I'm never with you anymore. The separation has already happened. Despite that, they still haven't come to accept this distance between them. Then we have another stanza that says, please come here. Holding dreams your eyes, a new sign in flight, orange light deep in, and you shine so bright. Orange light deep in you, deep in the autumn forest, deep in path. Now, I'm not too sure about those final lines, but the idea that there is a bright light within them that shines, um, and that their eyes hold dreams. It's an acknowledgement of understanding that this person had bigger things and they had to leave. They weren't going to accomplish things here. And so there is a happiness for them, which might be the more positive aspects of the track, but there's still that sadness that they're not here anymore. And this person never got over that. They never found a way to reconcile those two feelings of happiness for the person but sadness for themselves. And it just destroys everything. The music it's almost a hollow shell. When you listen to how the sound is delivered to you, it sounds like it's echoing and bouncing off of so many walls before it gets to you. And that hollowness shines through in the music. The song is not as full as it could be. It's not as bright as it could be. It's not as easily understood as it could be. It's all hidden beneath this wall of sound. There is destruction and distortion on every component of this track. This sadness, this grief eats away at our vocalist or our main character, and they know it, but they still don't know how to deal with it. Those are my thoughts on Sadness's I Can't Say Goodbye. Let me know your thoughts, perspectives, and opinions down in the comments. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, a link to the Discord server, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap this all up with our usual 3 videos. Then we have an album on Saturday. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.